4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, execute! Season 2 is a great season, one that continues the story of the survivors in unexpected ways, but also resolves the mystery of the underground hatch that Locke and Boone found in the first season. The season also introduces the survivors of the tail section of the plane, and we learn more about the others, as well as the Dharma Initiative, who are responsible for building the hatches on the island. And we perhaps get an answer as to why Oceanic 815 crashed on the island. The second season of Lost is brilliantly acted, extremely suspenseful, and emotionally resonant. The second season builds on the promise of the first season and completely delivers a satisfying second chapter in the Lost saga. It's really terrific. Men of Science, Men of Faith. Jack, Kate, Locke decide to go inside the hatch. Jack is reluctant at first. He doesn't want to go, but Locke goes in with Kate. They both get caught by a man named Desmond. Jack goes after in the hatch. He follows them, and then he discovers that Locke has been kidnapped along with Kate. While searching for Vincent in the jungle, Shannon has a terrifying vision of Walt, and she is going bananas. She doesn't know what's going on, and Saeed doesn't really believe her. In flashbacks, Jack operates on his wife Sarah. She has her spine crushed in a car accident, and he tries to operate on her. While Jack is working out in a stadium, he meets Desmond, and he is later shocked to find out that this is the same person who is in the hatch and has hold on Locke. I love this first episode. It immediately brings you back into the world of Lost, and I just love the way it opens too. Like the opening, you don't even know that it's taking place on the island. It's a flashback where you see like this man starting to work out. He like starting his day with the now like iconic song for Lost, which is the Make Your Own Kind of Music. And we soon figure out that this is actually the hatch, and it's kind of a mind-blowing way to start this episode. I loved Men of Science, Men of Faith. I give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. It's the episode Adrift, and the episode focuses mostly on Michael and Sawyer, who are stranded in the middle of the ocean. The raft just blew up, and now they're alive, but they don't really see eye to eye because Michael blames Sawyer for firing the flare, and Sawyer is shot. He is bleeding really horribly, and he even manages to take out the bullet himself, which is like, wow, that is a badass being right there. In flashback, Michael is battling his ex-wife Susan for the custody of his son. He doesn't want to let him go, and what a bitch Susan is, really. On the island, flashbacks are also shown on what happened to Kate and Locke when they entered the hatch, and how Desmond forces Locke to tie Kate, and Locke throws her in the food locker. He manages to give her like a pocket knife so that she can escape. Desmond takes Locke hostage, but he isn't aware that Jack is arriving, and so we are brought back to where Jack meets Desmond and Locke. Like, Jack doesn't know what's going on and asking Locke where Kate is. Across the island, Jin survived. Like, Michael and Sawyer, they meet Jin on the beach. I love the way like they see him. It's like he's yelling, others, others. And then we see like some other people there. Are they others? Are they members of the tail section of the plane? Who knows? But like, it's brutal the way they come after the survivors. I think Adrift is a good solid second episode, not like as good as the premiere, and I think that we see this event happening like too many times where Locke, Jack, and Desmond meet, and like we see it at least 3 times, and I think that like maybe twice would have been enough. But I think it's still solid, the second episode. I'd give this episode a 9 out of 10. Episode 3 is orientation. In flashbacks, Locke begins seeing a woman, Helen, who he meets in like support groups. He is still feeling betrayed by his father, who stole one of his kidney. Locke is just a tragic character. So in that hatch, they manage to get the upper hand of Desmond. Kate accidentally shoots the computer, in which you need to enter the codes 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, and then hit execute. And like Desmond just freaks out when this happens, like when the computer is completely like broken. And because he thinks that this will bring the end of the world. So Locke tells Kate to go get Saeed for help. And while Kate goes to get Saeed, Desmond decides to show Locke and Jack an orientation video from the Dharma Initiative. They made this video to explain what one needs to do in order to stop the hatch from blowing up. There was an incident long ago, and now that there was like a breach in the pocket of energy, you have to press the codes every 108 minutes, otherwise the island will explode. Locke buys into it more than Jack. Jack doesn't really believe in it in the videotape, but Locke is absolutely 100% convinced that this is real. So Desmond, he sees that there's like no hope. He tries to fix the computer, he isn't able to. And so he decides to get the hell out of there, and Saeed comes back to help fix the broken computer. Jack goes after Desmond. He tries to stop Desmond from leaving, and then the two of them, they realize that they have met each other before. They've seen each other at the stadium while they were working out, and Desmond asks Jack what happened to the girl, and then Jack like just yells out, "I married her," and then he just like bursts into tears. It's a fantastic performance from Mathew Fox. So Jack goes back to the hatch, and he goes to see like what's happening with the computer. Saeed has fixed it. He fixed the problem. Like Locke is about to enter the code, but he tells Jack to do it because he wants Jack to have a leap of faith. And I love this conversation between the two of them. I love that Locke is like asking Jack, like, "Why do you find it so hard to believe?" And Jack answers, "Why do you find it so easy? Never been easy." I love this moment so much. It's one of my favorite moments of the entire like series. I think that it's so well acted too. So Jack finally agrees, and he puts the numbers in, and then he hits execute like at the very last moment. And the numbers, they roll back to 108. So Locke decides to like make shifts for everybody. He wants like everybody to pitch in. At least there are like a lot of survivors, so like they can share the workload, unlike Desmond, who was like alone. Like I don't know how he did it. I'd give this episode a 9 out of 10. Next up is Everybody Hates Hugo. In this episode, Hurley is given the task of being in charge of the food in the bunker, so he can't distribute it to everyone until he counts like how many portions like that they have and how many food that everyone can get. And this can be problematic because like people are starting to realize that there is food, and like Charlie goes to Hurley and he begs him for like peanut butter because Claire really likes peanut butter, and then he gets angry at Hurley because Hurley says he can't do dude. So Hurley sort of goes a bit crazy because he's afraid that everybody's gonna start hating him, and he almost tries to like blow up the food closet in the hatch, but he's stopped by Rose, thankfully, because like he would have done really something stupid. He could have hurt himself or hurt somebody else, but Rose stops him. She tells him, "How can anybody hate you? You're like one of the most nicest person on this island," and I agree with her. And so Hurley decides to go to Jack, and he tells Jack that they need to give the food away, that he's done his count, like everybody has enough food for like several months. So Jack agrees, and he gives Charlie the peanut butter for Claire. So in the hatch, Jack and Saeed inspect the hatch. Saeed tells Jack that the door has like 10 feet of concrete behind it. Jack shows him that the hatch is really attracted to electromagnetism, and like his key that he has around his neck, it moves by itself. Like Lost has amazing mythology. I think that is so interesting. Saeed suggests that they should try to go under the concrete and see what they will find. So in flashbacks, we see Hugo winning the lottery on the night that he won. Like he just passes out. He quits his job at Mr. Cluck's, and because it's so horrible there, and like he doesn't need it anymore. But then his friend Johnny also quits, and then he wants to spend like as much time with Johnny as possible without like him knowing that he actually won lottery, because like he's afraid that it's gonna change everything. And then it does. Johnny just like resents Hurley. He doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. But like, isn't that like really stupid? I mean, like if your friend won the lottery, you probably be so happy like for your friend. I don't get why Johnny is like super pissed at Hurley. It doesn't really make sense to me. Jin, Michael, and Sawyer, they learn that the others are actually members of the tail section of the plane that survived the crash as well, and they've been living on their own. They talk to this woman called Ana Lucia, who is there just to interrogate them and to find out who they are. So I'm ranked this episode 8.5 out of 10. I think it's pretty solid. Next up is Anne Found. So on the island, Sun loses her wedding ring and tries hard to find it. She is helped by like Jack, Kate, Hurley, and Locke, but she only finds it like near the end of the episode, because she was trying to bury like the bottle that I think Claire found in the ocean that washed up, and she was trying to bury it. So in flashbacks, we see that Sun was starting to have a relationship with a rich man, and Jin meanwhile starts working in a hotel. He opens doors for people, and he can't let poor people enter the hotel to use the bathroom, and he does. Like he lets a kid use the bathroom, and then the manager comes like yelling at him. And this manager also treats Jin like trash, by the way. Like he's really like a terrible person. And so yeah, he yells at Jin, and Jin just quits. He's had enough. Then he actually meets like the love of his life, Sun, after that he quit his job. So on the other side of the island, Sawyer, Michael, and Jin, they start to head back with the others, like Ana Lucia, Mr. Echo, Cindy, Libby, and Bernard. They head back to the beach, but like Sawyer is really wounded and he can barely walk. Michael escapes, and he tries to search for Walt, but then Jin and Mr. Echo, they head for Michael and they try to bring him back, and they do find him, and Jin manages to bring him back, and he promises Michael that like we're gonna find Walt. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's a great, entertaining episode. I'd give this an 8.5 out of 10. Abandoned. So flashbacks of this episode show like Shannon's life and how she dealt with the death of her father, and how like her mother was pretty mean to her. And we do see Boone in this episode, which is nice. But I've never really been a fan of like Shannon and Boone's flashbacks. I don't think that they add much to their characters. So on the island, Sawyer just collapses. He is unable to continue. He is really hurt. They don't leave him there, thankfully. So they build him a stretcher and they bring him along on their journey towards the beach. So on the beach, Saeed takes Shannon out, and they make love in a tent. But Shannon sees Walt again. Like she has like this vision of Walt like all wet, and like he's whispering something to her. It's like I'm right out of the horror movie. But Saeed, he follows her around. Saeed tries to reason with her. And then this is where we get like one of the most shocking endings of this season. So Shannon is in the middle of the jungle. It starts to rain. Like the other survivors, they arrive near the beach, and Ana Lucia, like Bernard and Mr. Echo, like they start hearing these whispers, and Shannon is killed. Ana Lucia accidentally shoots her, and she dies, and it's tragic. It's a really sad moment, and like Saeed is completely devastated. A really good episode. I'd give this episode 9.5 out of 10. The other 48 days is when we get like an entire flashback episode of what happened to the other survivors of the tail section of the plane, and we see how they survived, and like they had it brutal, man. Like probably it was as bad as like the other survivors, but like the other 48 days shows like how like Anna Lucia, Mr. Echo, and Bernard, like how they really dealt with things, and how like their people kept getting abducted by the others. This must have been like a traumatizing experience for them. Like imagine like you're on a seemingly deserted island, but like there are other people there, and they kidnap people on the beach. Like nowhere is safe almost. So like they decide to get off the beach, and they find like this hatch, this Dharma Initiative hatch, and then they like hide inside. And yeah, they also think that like one of others is among them. Ana Lucia thinks that it's this guy named Nathan. She traps him down, and she like eventually kills him. But she had the wrong man, because the right person that was actually the one that they wanted was Goodwin. Like she didn't really suspect that, because Goodwin was really convincing. Goodwin tried to kill Ana Lucia, but Ana Lucia manages to kill him just before he kills her. And it's a great intense moment. Really enjoyed this episode. I'd give this a 9 out of 10. Next up is Collision. This is like the first episode that is starring Ana Lucia in flashbacks, and she was a cop, and like she was shot by like this burglar, and she was pregnant at the time that she was shot, and so she wants revenge. They have caught this man, and like she is supposed to identify him, but she just doesn't, because she plans on killing him afterwards. So she doesn't identify him, and she just shoots him dead. So on the island, Ana Lucia decides to tie Saeed to a tree so he can't kill her. And Saeed is like just losing it, man. He is really upset, like as anyone would be. But this is like an accident, so I get it. Like she didn't know that it was Shannon. She thought it was something else, and she fired the gun. But like she should have waited to see like who it was, I guess, before firing. So like the rest of them, Bernard, Mr. Echo, Libby, they just want to go to the beach. Like they don't want Lean to get like involved with this mess. And so like Ana Lucia, she doesn't really know what to do, and Saeed, like that's what he says like she doesn't have a plan. All she has is her guilt and her gun. And he's right. So like she asks Michael to go get her like a bag of supplies, so that she can live by herself in the middle of the jungle. And so like she begins to talk with Saeed, and she just doesn't want to go through with it. And then she tells him that like the burglar shot her, and that like she's been dead ever since. He asks her like what happened to the burglar, and she replies like nothing happened. So she decides to eventually let Saeed go. She unties him, and she tells him that he should kill her. She gives him the gun, and like Saeed just replies like, what good would it be to kill you if we're both already dead? Which I think is a great line. And so he picks up Shannon, and then he meets Jack. Jack met Mr. Echo. Meanwhile, while all this was happening, Mr. Echo went with Michael back at the beach, and he met Jack. Jack tried to bargain with Mr. Echo. He wanted Mr. Echo to lead them to the incident, but Mr. Echo didn't want to. He eventually agrees if they like go without guns. So Jack goes with Mr. Echo to see Shannon, and then he meets Ana Lucia, which like is a shock to him. Mr. Echo like mentioned her name when he was talking to him. Ana Lucia made a mistake. And then like you can see Jack in his eyes like lit up, and he almost like snaps out of it. Like he snaps out of his anger at that moment, because like he's so shocked that he mentioned Ana Lucia, because he met her in Sydney in the airport. I'd give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. It's like a great episode. It's almost hard to watch, but I really enjoyed this episode. It's like a really sad one too. Next up is what Kate did. So flashbacks show us like what crime Kate committed in her life for the marshal to be after her, and she actually like blew up the house to kill Wayne, who is like her abusive stepfather. Her mother married Wayne, and like he is a woman beater, he's a drunk, and so it's like she blew up his house. I get it, like I understand Kate's motivation here, and yeah, I don't really see Kate as a bad person, because like only wanted her mother to be safe. It's not the best option. It's probably was the only option that she thought of at that moment. So Jack is treating Sawyer back at the hatch, and Sawyer is like really not feeling well. He has fever, and Jack is treating him the best he can. Everyone is like reunited now, and while collecting fruit, Kate sees like a horse in the middle of the jungle. Now this horse, well, he is real. Somebody else sees the horse at the end. I'm forgetting who at the moment. I'm guessing like that he was once part of the others colony, because like we see them on horses in this series, so I'm pretty sure that he belonged to them and he didn't belong to the Dharma folks, because the Dharma folks actually use cars while the others use horses. So there you go. So Kate tells Jack that like she can take the shift so that Jack can go to Shannon's funeral, and I love the moment where like she thinks that Sawyer is possessed by Wayne, because Sawyer like just grabs her and he tells her like, why did you kill me? So Kate rushes out, and like she leaves the computer unmanned, and so like the counter keeps running towards 0. So after the funeral, Jack goes back to the hatch. He finds the hatch empty. He doesn't see Kate, and like he finds Sawyer on the floor. He helps him up, and he's wondering what happened. And like Locke enters the numbers, and also like Shannon's funeral is really heartbreaking. Like Saeed's the one who speaks for her. At the hatch, Michael tells Locke about the blast door in the ceiling. Locke like had no idea about that. Locke decides to show Michael and Mr. Echo, who like arrived to the hatch, the orientation video. So Locke shows them the video, and then Echo, he brings out a book to Locke, and then he tells the story about like the Bible and stuff. Like Locke just like says, oh, you mean when you said beginning, you meant like really the beginning. I love the conversation between them. And then he shows like the missing piece of the video, because like the video has missing information, and so Locke like just looks at the film and he's like shocked. So Jack goes to see Kate. Like he doesn't understand her, and then like Kate kisses Jack, and she's really confused. And so like she talks with Sawyer again. She wonders like why Wayne is Sawyer, and it's really great funny moment when like Sawyer wakes up, and then like she asks her like, who the hell is Wayne? Gloss is full of these funny moments that just makes it even better to watch. So she takes Sawyer outside of the hatch. Like he doesn't believe that they are still at the island. He thinks that they are rescued, but like nope, he sees that they are still back, and he's like, son of a bitch. So at the end of the episode, Michael starts talking to Walt on the computer that they write the numbers in the hatch. Like I find it really stupid that he never questions like who he's talking to. Maybe it's not Walt. Michael should have been like more careful. Like whatever, he talks to Walt, and that's how this episode ends. I'd give this episode an 8.5 rating. I think it's really good episode. It's a really strong one. The 23rd Spawn. Flashbacks show Mr. Echo and Yemi, and how Echo got corrupted by like gangs, this warlord leader. He wanted Yemi to shoot somebody and like kill him, but Mr. Echo comes in and he stops Yemi from doing it. Like he stops his brother from committing murder. He does it himself, and that's how he gets corrupted. He gets into really bad stuff, and he wants Yemi's help. Like he wants to smuggle drugs out of the country, but he needs to be a priest to do so. So he wants Yami to sign like a piece of paper, and then he threatens Yami that he'll actually like burn his church down if he doesn't help Echo. So Yami does it. So Mr. Echo and like his followers, they are loading the plane. He's dressed as a priest, and then he is visited by Yami, who tells him that like he called the military. They soon arrive, and they start like shooting like all the priests, all the fake priests, and they accidentally kill Yemi. But Mr. Echo, he puts Yemi like on the plane. He tries to board the plane, but then like a man stops him. He pushes Echo out of the plane. And yeah, he doesn't go with them on the journey, and like this man actually like saved his life. On the island, Mr. Echo, he sees that Claire has like a Virgin Mary statue, and he knows exactly what's inside them, and so he goes to her. He questions her like it's an interrogation. He's like really intense, and he goes to ask her like where the hell did she get those Virgin statues, and she tells him that it was Charlie, that he's like really religious, but then he like breaks the statue in half and he shows her what's inside. Claire, like, she doesn't know what to say. So Mr. Echo, he orders Charlie to take him to the plane where he found the Virgin statues. Like, Charlie is really deceptive. He doesn't like Mr. Echo, but like he brings him there anyway. And then they find like this man who parachuted on the island, and like they find his corpse, and it was the man that actually saved Echo's life. And then they eventually find the plane. They find Mr. Echo's dead brother Yemi, and then Mr. Echo like gives Charlie one of the statues, like for the one I broke. So Mr. Echo and Charlie, they burn the plane, they burn the bodies. And Charlie goes back to Claire, but Claire wants nothing to do with Charlie because like she knows that he used heroin, and she suspects that he is using heroin, so like she cuts ties with him. Michael continues his communication with Walt on the computer, and like I think that just like is making him insane. Like he's wondering what the hell happened to his kid. Like I get it, and he just wants to find his kid. Sometimes make fun of Michael yelling just like Walt all the time. Like it comes annoying after a while. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. Not the best episode of the season, but I think it's like a fun watch. The hunting party. Flashbacks show Jack and his father working together at the hospital. Jack is growing attached to this woman who is seeking help for her father who needs like surgery, and she wants just Jack because Jack managed to help Sarah, and she starts to become romantically involved with Jack, but actually he doesn't go through with it. Like he could have slept with her, but he didn't. So he goes back to his wife, and he confesses his kiss to Sarah, but Sarah tells him that like their marriage is done, that she has somebody else. That part is a bit rushed because we don't really see like what went wrong. Like we just maybe see like that Jack's at the hospital too much, but then again, like she knew what she was going into. Like he's a doctor, he saved her life. So on the island, Jack finds Locke unconscious in the armory. He was wondering what happened. He tries to wake him up, but Michael is there and he's pointing a gun at Jack, and he locks Jack in the armory with Locke. He tells Jack that he's going after his boy and that there's nothing they can do to stop him. Jack and Locke, they're later saved by Kate and Sawyer, who arrive at the hatch so that like Sawyer get his bandages changed. And like Jack wants to go after Michael, but like Locke is trying to reason with him because like he knows that like Michael is too far gone at this point. Like there's no point in trying to bring him back, and he's right about that. Like they can't really force him to stay. Kate doesn't go because Jack doesn't want her to come with them. So it's now nighttime. They actually found the others, and now this like bearded man walks in. They meet him, and Sawyer recognizes him from the raft. So the bearded man, he tells the survivors that this isn't their island. He says that this is our island. The only reason why they live on it is because the others let them. So he tells them that they shouldn't cross this line, because if they start crossing this line, they're gonna die. Jack doesn't believe them. Jack thinks that there aren't many others there, but like the bearded man, he yells out, light them up, and we see like a bunch of torches being lit up, and we see how many others there are, and there are a lot of them. So they have no choice but to go back. They had kidnapped Kate as well. Kate decided to follow them because like she's Kate. So they have Kate at gunpoint, and they ask the survivors to surrender their guns and to never come back here. And so they have no choice but to agree to their terms, and they leave. And I love Sawyer's comment to like the bearded man. He's like, you and me ain't over yet. It's such a great moment. So when they go back to the beach, like Kate tries to make Jack understand why she did the thing that she did, but Jack doesn't want to hear Kate right now. He's too upset at her. But Sawyer says like, yeah, I would have done the same, and like, yeah, he would have. So Jack goes to Ana Lucia at the end of this episode, and he asks her like, how long would it take to build an army, like to train people and how to use guns, which is like some plot point that never gets resolved in this show. Like we never see these two like training people. I would have liked that. Like the next episode is like kind of mediocre, and I would have replaced that episode with like a training episode. I give this episode a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this episode, and I like how like the others are introduced. So yeah, Fire Plus Water I don't think is the strongest episode of the season. It might be the worst, I don't know about that, but it's just really an okay episode. Like I'm sort of getting tired of like seeing Charlie just getting back into his addiction. Like it's almost like they don't really have much story to tell with him. So we're gonna go back to the well of the drug problem, the heroin problem, and it sort of gets like tiresome. And here he is sort of having like visions on how like Aaron, Claire's baby, needs to be baptized. And so like he kidnaps the baby, almost like he's sleepwalking, because he doesn't really know what he's doing. He sort of awakens like in the water with the baby, and like everybody freaks out, and Claire like just takes the baby from him. It's a bit weird. So he tells Claire that Aaron needs to be baptized. She doesn't believe him, but she starts to ask questions. So Charlie, he starts a fire to cause diversion, and then he kidnaps the baby again. He tries to baptize him, but then like people like they notice what he's done. He eventually gives the baby back to Claire, and Locke just punches him several times in the face. Brutal. Charlie gets his ass handed to him. Like he acted like an asshole, and he deserves like every blow Locke gave him. So at the end of the episode, Claire still asks Mr. Echo to baptize her baby, and I think that's a sweet scene. Just this episode doesn't really do it for me. I think that it's a little slow, and like you just, I don't know, it feels a bit boring compared to the others. So it's 7 out of 10 for me. It's not like terrible or anything, but it's just like not really one that I rewatch over and over again. The Long Con. This is one of actually my favorite episodes. So in flashbacks, Sawyer is attempting to con a woman called Cassidy. He eventually falls for her. He knew that she had like $600,000. So he was going to con her. He fell in love with her. Sawyer, he meets his partner Gordy, who threatens to kill her and him if he doesn't go through with it. So like he tells Cassidy everything. He tells her the truth. He tells her to run, and he gives her a bag full of money, but like that bag is actually like empty, and Sawyer takes her money. He's kind of a douchebag. He cares for her, but at the same time he steals from her. And like, yeah, Sawyer, he's not like that great of a dude, but she fell for it, I guess. So on the island, Sawyer commits his long con. This episode is great because like Sawyer kind of outsmarts everybody. He makes everybody like doubt like each other, and all of this plays into like how smart Sawyer is. So like son gets kidnapped in her garden, and at first they think that it's the others, but then they soon realize that no, it's probably one of their own. He makes Locke question Jack because like Jack wants to start an army, and so he tells Locke that people are going to come for the guns, and Locke decides to change like the location of the guns. Like he makes Locke do it. And so Locke brings the guns to another location, and like we have Anna Lucia. Meanwhile, she's sort of asking for the gun, and it's a really clever ploy from Sawyer. It really is. And so like while Locke is changing guns, Sawyer is taking the shift in the hatch. So like he has sort of an alibi. He can't leave. He's putting the numbers inside the computer. So we find out at the end that like Sawyer has the guns. Sawyer tricked Locke, he tricked Jack, like he tricked everybody, and he hid the guns. He knows where the guns are, and he made fools out of everybody, like Locke, Jack especially, and so he has control of the guns. He's like, there's a new sheriff in town, fellas, better get used to it. I love this moment. I love this episode. And then at the end, we find out how a douchebag Charlie is, because like he was in on it. He helped Sawyer get the guns. He followed Locke, and he also kidnapped Son. It's a great episode. I love the long con. I think it's one of the best episodes of the entire season. So I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Next up is One of Them. This is a great episode. This is the first episode that Michael Emerson appears in. And like he completely steals the show. He's amazing, and the writers even like realized how good he was, because like he was supposed to do like only a couple of episodes, and then he was done. But they decided to make him like a series regular because he was just so damn terrific. So at the beginning of this episode, Russo arrives at the beach, and she goes to see Saeed, and she tells him that she actually caught one of them in one of her traps. But Saeed, he really doesn't trust Russo because she tried to kidnap Claire's baby, and so Russo decides in a symbol of trust to hand him her gun, and together they go see Henry Gale. And so they arrive to Henry, and he's caught in a net. He tells Saeed that he's not from this island. He's from Minnesota. He came here with his wife and with weather balloon. And so Saeed decides to untie him, but then Russo shoots him with the crossbow in his shoulder. And then Saeed decides to take him back to camp, and then Russo tells him, like, do not be mistaken, he is one of them. Like, she's sure of it. And meanwhile, in flashbacks, we see Saeed is taken captive by the Americans during the Iraqi War, and needs to torture Tariq by the orders of one Clancy Brown, this man named Kelvin, who we later see in the finale of the season. We see him later on the island, which is pretty insane. So Saeed brings Henry back to the hatch, but Saeed really wants to interrogate him. He wants to know the truth. So Locke actually changes the code of the armory without Jack knowing. And Saeed gets himself locked up with Henry, and he just starts beating the hell out of Henry. He wants to know everything. He thinks that Henry is lying. So Jack tries to get Locke to open the armory to save Henry. Locke doesn't want to. And then the computer sound starts to go off, like we're getting near zero. And then Locke goes to the armory, and then it goes directly to the numbers before the countdown goes down to zero. And then Jack immediately goes to stop Saeed beating up Henry Gale. Saeed is convinced that Henry Gale is another because he didn't feel anything while beating him up. Like, he knew at that moment that Henry Gale was lying, and he tells Jack that, make no mistake, this man is one of them. And then Saeed goes to see Charlie, and then he explains to Charlie how they caught one of them and how he tortured him. He tells Charlie that Locke and Jack, they forgot what the others did, but Then Saeed asks Charlie, like, what about you, Charlie? Have you forgotten what they did to you? Michael Emerson is fantastic here. Great episode, 8.5 out of 10. Next up is maternity leave. Aaron is starting to have a fever and Claire is getting worried. She's starting to have like these flashbacks of where she was taken, during the time she was kidnapped, during the 2 weeks there. She was taken to this other hatch, this other facility. She then has visions of Russo, so she asks Kate help. She wants to go to Russo and ask her where this medical facility is so that Aaron can get better, so that she can get vaccine. So they go see Russo, and of course, like, they don't really trust her, but they go to see her anyway. And then they head to this facility, this other hatch, but they quickly find that it's abandoned, and like they don't really find the vaccine there. But Kate actually finds like costumes and makeup and like fake beards, and she sort of realizes that the others are actually pretending to be savages. They're not really hostile. And then on their way back from the facility, she realizes when she sees like Russo's scars on her arm that Russo was actually there to help her. She wanted her to escape, but like Claire was so drugged at this point, like the others drugged her because they didn't want her to leave. And so she understands that the Russo wanted to help her, and she seems thankful to Russo. And then when they arrive at the beach, she tells Russo that a young girl named Alex actually saved her. And Russo is happy to know that like this young girl might be her daughter, Alex, that she's been looking for 17 years. So Locke and Jack try to figure out what to do with Henry Gale. Echo goes inside the hatch himself and like realizes what is happening. He sees some clues and he figures out that they have caught one of them. He demands to go talk to Henry. And then like he's really creepy because like he just like cuts his beard in front of him and like he leaves. Like Henry is just probably just like really wondering what the hell is happening. Jack like tells Locke what to do. He really bosses Locke around this season. Like Jack is kind of an asshole, I think. Yeah, I guess it's because Locke didn't tell Jack the truth, like the real way Boone died, and Jack is pissed at Locke, but Boone would have died anyways. At some point, Jack needs to let go. Henry then tells Locke like, why do you let him treat you this way? And then Locke just snaps. He locks him up. He's super upset. And then Locke just throws the dishes on the floor, and then Henry hears this and he smiles. Like he's just trying to get under Locke's skin, under Jack's skin. It's kind of working. So Aaron ends up being okay at the end. His fever is almost completely gone. Jack checks up on him. I give this episode a 9 out of 10. I think it's great stuff. It's really an entertaining episode. The whole truth. Flashbacks delve deeper into Sun and Jin's relationship. In this episode, Sun finds out that Jin really can't have children, but the doctor tells Sun that she is the one who can't have children. Just because like the doctor is terrified of Jin, like he knows that Jin is working for her father, and he can't ever say that to Jin's face, otherwise like Jin is gonna beat him up. So we also see Sun having an affair with her English teacher, and she never tells Jin this. Imagine like his reaction if he ever found out. Like Sun isn't really an angel. She lies to Jin a lot, but I guess it's because of Jin's past behavior. Their marriage is far from perfect, but I guess they love each other, so that's what is important in the end. On the beach, Jin sees like Sun working her garden, and he really like gets angry. He rips out all of the plants, and then he orders her back to the beach because like Sun got kidnapped, and he's afraid that it's gonna happen again. Sun goes to the beach angrily, and she actually goes to Sawyer for a pregnancy test. She thinks that she might be pregnant. Meanwhile, Locke goes to Ana Lucia and suggests that she should interrogate Henry Gale because she's a police officer and she's used to interrogating witnesses. Ana Lucia accepts, and she gets Henry to draw him a map to his balloon. Ana Lucia goes to see Saeed, and she asks him to go along, and then Charlie decides to go along with them, and the three of them, they head out to the jungle to search for Henry Gale's balloon. And I love that even though it was Locke's idea, I love that and Lucia just doesn't tell him. Like they just decides to go to the balloon anyway. I just find that funny. Meanwhile, Sun is waiting for her pregnancy test along with Kate. She's worried, and then she is positive. She goes to see Jack, and she tells him that it's possible, but Jack laughs and he's like, oh, it's possible. She doesn't want to tell Jin, but Jack suggests that she should tell him like right away before like the entire island finds out, and Jin just doesn't. I think that Jack is right here, like Sun can't keep this from Jin. And so I love the moment where Sawyer meets Bernard and Jin, and then he tells Jin like, "Oh, there you are, Daddy-o." Jin doesn't really understand, but Bernard does, and like Bernard says like, "Oh, Sun is pregnant." Jin doesn't understand anything they're saying. So then the next morning, Jin goes to Sun's garden, and he tries to fix the damage he caused, and Sun tells him that she is pregnant, and she tells him that the child is 100% his. And the two of them are happy and they embrace, and it's all good. So in the hatch, Jack decides to take Henry and Gale out of the armory for cereal, and mentions Anna Lucia, who asks him to draw her a map of his balloon. And then like we see the reaction of Locke and Jack. It's just like hilarious. And then Henry Gale says like, oh, you guys really have trust issues. And then like he just goes on and he tells them about if like he was really one of them, like he would lure Saeed, Anna Lucia, and Charlie into a trap so that they could get like kidnapped. This doesn't go well with Jack and Locke. Gale doesn't care, like he just asks them, got any milk? I just love the ending of this episode. It's really great. It ends right after that sentence, and I really love it. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Like, all of these episodes are really great. Next up is Lockdown. The episode focuses on Locke in the flashbacks, and we sort of see why he and Helen broke up. Anthony Cooper is just one asshole of a dude. So after like Henry Gale asks for milk, he just like starts to backtrack a bit, and like I was joking, it wasn't really what my intention, but like Jack like throws him back in the armory. So they argue what to do next, like if they should follow Saeed, Anna Lucia, and Charlie, but like they're long gone, pointless to follow them. Meanwhile, Charlie, Anna Lucia, and Saeed find the missing balloon because it starts to rain above them, but they don't receive any rain. Saeed decides to dig Henry Gale's grave and finds the real Henry Gale, which now confirms that Henry Gale is not the man he said he was. So while he's alone in the hatch, Locke starts to hear like these static noises, and then like the doors, all the blast doors, they come down, and he's almost locked in the hatch. But he manages to stick like this crowbar under the blast doors. So there is still 47 minutes left to enter the numbers. There's still time. But Locke knows that he needs help to open the hatch door. So he goes to get Henry Gale for help. And Henry agrees if no harm is to come to him, no matter what happens. And Locke needs to keep his word. So Locke lets him out. And the two of them, they manage to bring the door up a couple of feet, not a lot, from the ground. And then Locke goes under it, and the door just falls on his legs. I mean, that must have hurt like hell. Locke then tells Henry that he must go through the air vents to the other side of the door so that he can enter the numbers and hit execute. And Henry tries to go up the vents, but he falls down. He gets knocked out. Like, I'm not surprised because like he just had an arrow through his shoulder. And while Locke is like under the door, Henry Gale awakens. He goes through the air vents, and like the numbers come down back to 0. A map is shown. Like the lights go out. A map is shown, and there's a bunch of question marks everywhere. It shows like where the other hatches are on the island, and like it's a great looking map too. Like Locke is just like, doesn't know what he's looking at. And on the beach, we get this funny moment between Jack, Hurley, Kate, and Sawyer, where they all play poker, and Jack and Sawyer, they want to like wager a bet, like who is better at poker, and Sawyer loses terribly. It's pretty hilarious. And Jack doesn't ask for the guns if he loses, but he does ask for the medicine. And then Sawyer asks him, like, why did you ask for the guns? And then Jack simply replies, when I want the guns, I'll get the guns. So Jack and Kate, they see some blinking yellow lights, and then they go there, and then they find Dharma food, which is great. Like, it's another stash of food, but like, they just don't understand from where it came from. Like, why is it still like falling down on the island? And this is something that is later resolved in the epilogue, the new man in charge. And then they soon encounter Saeed, Charlie, and Ana Lucia, who arrived from their journey to searching the weather balloon. And like, Jack asks them, like, what do you find? And then we just like see Saeed's expression, like he's satisfied with what he found, and that's how the episode ends. I like this episode a lot. I think it's really suspenseful. I'd give this episode a 9 out of 10. Dave. So in flashbacks, Hurley is sent to a mental institution where he meets someone called Dave, and the two bond, the two become friends, but Dave isn't really the best influence on Hurley. He makes him do kind of questionable things, bad things. But we soon later find out that Dave isn't really real. He's this imaginary friend to Hurley, and when he sees his picture, like, we see that Dave doesn't exist. So like, Hurley's a bit crazy. We see Dave again on the island. Like, Hurley sees Dave all the time, kind of like Jack sees his father in the episode White Rabbit. Like, he just sees his friend all the time and he chases him. And meanwhile, like, Hurley has trouble dieting. He has like a secret stash in the jungle and become more than friends with Libby. And then they start ripping the food shreds. Like, why are you doing that? You can just like give the people on the island the food, but whatever. And so we arrive near the end of the episode where Dave is trying to get Hurley to kill himself. They arrive to this cliff, and Dave tells Hurley that he needs to wake up, and in order to do that, he needs to kill himself. He tells Hurley that he's still in the mental institution and that everything on the island was fake, it wasn't real. And so he tries to convince Hurley to kill himself. Dave jumps, and then like, you can tell like Hurley is like maybe about to do it, but then Libby arrives. And then Hurley questions his reality, but Libby tells him that like everything that she's experienced was real and that she really loves him. And the two kiss, the two are now a couple. So I'd give this episode an 8 out of 10. It's not one of my favorite episodes. It's kind of like a bit of filler episode to me, but it's still pretty entertaining. And next up is SOS. So the flashbacks here focus on Rose and Bernard. I really like them as characters, and like, this is mostly the only episode that focuses on them. So we see how they met, and we see how their relationship develops. Bernard asks Rose to marry him, but then Rose tells Bernard that she has cancer. She only has like months to live, but he wants to marry her anyway. And then on their honeymoon, he takes her out to Australia to see a healer. It's kind of touching, actually. So on the island, Bernard wants to do this like SOS sign. It's kind of pointless adventure because like, no plane is gonna see that. It's not big enough, and like, they're not gonna get rescued because of that. But like, he tries to get the survivors to help him, but like, he's a terrible leader. He bosses people around, and like, he loses everybody like one by one. And then Rose doesn't really agree with him, but she eventually comes clean, and she tells him that her cancer is gone because of the island. Like, she is feeling better now ever since she came here. And so Bernard realizes that they can never leave, that they'll remain on this island for the remainder of their days. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. And so, meanwhile, we get Jack and Kate, who decide to go to the others to exchange Henry Gale for Walt. And on their way there, they're actually caught in a net, and then like Sawyer makes fun of them. Like, Sawyer thinks that means something else, but they were actually caught in a net. So Jack and Kate arrives to the place where the others told them not to cross. They arrive to this imaginary line. Like, Jack is yelling at them until he can't anymore, and they're just waiting for them to arrive. But they know that the others aren't coming. But they come face to face with Michael, who came back. Michael runs to them. He's completely exhausted, and he collapses beside them. I'd give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. It's really entertaining. I like the relationship of Rose and Bernard. Next up is Two for the Road. So flashback shows Ana Lucia immediately after her shooting the burglar. She leaves. She decides to head to Australia, where she meets Christian, Jack's father of all people. Like, Jack's father met Sawyer, he met Ana Lucia. Talk about destiny, man. And so, like, she becomes the sort of bodyguard for Christian. I don't know, does Christian pay her, or are they like buddy? She then like follows him around. They end up at this house. Christian goes to yell at this woman, and he asks to see like his daughter, and we eventually know who his daughter is going to end up being. Ana Lucia interferes. She goes to stop Christian because like the argument's clearly getting heated. And she eventually gets tired of Christian's antics, and she calls her mother, and she tells her that she wants to come home. She wants to go back to LA. And that's how she got on the fateful Oceanic 815 flight. So on the island, Ana Lucia is starting to interrogate Henry Gale. Henry like attacks her. He almost kills her, but John knocks Henry out before he can. And then like Ana Lucia is just like panting. She actually asks for a gun. They're not gonna give it to her. She goes to see Sawyer, and like she sleeps with him just to get the gun in order to kill Henry. So Michael wakes up at the hatch, and he tells the others everything that he knows, and he tells them like the survivors can easily take down the others. So Jack and Locke decide to go get the guns, but they don't have enough, so they have no choice but to get the guns from Sawyer, who realizes that Ana Lucia stole his gun. And meanwhile, Hurley is planning a picnic for Libby. He's doing all these nice things for her, but then he like spills the beans, and she knows about it, but he like forgets a bunch of stuff. He forgets blankets, he forgets food, and she helps him out. She goes back to the hatch, which leads to a really unpleasant scene. So Michael arrives back at the hatch. He sees Ana Lucia there, and she tells him that like Locke and Jack went to get the guns. And Ana Lucia tells Michael about Henry Gale and how he tried to kill her earlier that day, and that she tried to kill him but couldn't go through with it. And so Michael tells Ana Lucia that he can do it. He can kill Henry Gale. And she gives him his gun, but Michael says, "I'm sorry," and then he shoots Ana Lucia. He kills her. And it's a shocking moment. It's something that we don't really expect. And then Libby arrives, and Michael turns on her and shoots her as well. It's a really shocking ending, one of the most shocking endings of the entire series. And while I understand what Michael is trying to do, he needs to free Henry Gale. He lets Henry Gale go, and then he shoots himself. But I think that there were easier ways to do that, man. Like, he could have just like knocked Ana Lucia out with his gun. He could have told her like, "Oh, I'm gonna take this shift," and then like she would have understood, like something like that. Like, you didn't need to kill Ana Lucia, you didn't need to kill Libby. It just really is unfortunate, and it's really sad. It angers me every time I watch it. It was really shocking. 9 out of 10 for this episode, even though like I hate watching this scene. Next up is the episode question mark. So Echo has weird dreams revolving like Ana Lucia, Yemi, and the hatch. Yami tells him that he needs to go find John, and that like John has lost his way, and he needs to ask him about the question mark. So meanwhile, Kate, Sawyer, and Jack are all heading to the hatch. When they see Michael get out, he's wounded, and Michael tells them that like Henry escaped and he shot Ana Lucia and Libby. So Locke is there, and Echo suggests that he and Locke go after Henry Gale, but Echo really wants Locke to bring him to the question mark because of his dreams. So Locke and Echo go through the jungle, but Locke soon realizes that Echo was lying, and Echo tells Locke to bring him to the question mark, but Locke doesn't know what he's talking about, and he doesn't want to go. He prepares to head back. Echo knocks him out, and then when Locke wakes up, Echo asks him again to bring him to the question mark. The two of them head there. I love this episode. I really like what they find. They go to the crash plane. Like they go to this place and they find the Pearl station, which is like monitoring station, and they discover like a series of television monitors, and they actually can see the swan from one of the TVs. So the two of them, they find another Dharma tape and they play it, and the tape informs them that like the Dharma station, the Pearl, is to monitor other stations and to see how like their subjects perform, and like they need to write notes and just send them to the organization. Locke actually thinks that this is just an experiment. It's just a lousy experiment, but Echo disagrees. Echo thinks that this work is really important. And I love like how Locke switches completely. Like at the beginning of the season, he was a believer, but now he just doesn't believe anymore, and he thinks that the work is really stupid. And yeah, he is really convinced. So Echo takes this log printing that they found, which is going to be important for later, and they go back to the beach. And meanwhile, at the Swan Station, Libby is still alive. She's fighting for survival. Jack is trying to help her. He's doing the best he can. And then Michael is shocked that she's still alive because he's scared that she's gonna say something. And she murmurs his name a couple of times. But fortunately for Michael, she dies. And it's really sad. Like, Hurley tells her like he's sorry that he forgot the blankets. And Kate is crying. Sawyer comforts her. 9 out of 10 for this episode. It's really good stuff. And we are approaching the finale of this season. Next up is 3 minutes. So in this episode, we are finally getting to see what happened to Michael when he went to the others. Starts when Michael locks John and Jack in the armory, and he flees to the others. He tries to find his son. So on his journey, Michael is taken by the others, and he is taken to some place that has a lot of tents and is very secluded, and he sees like how they are almost like just savages. They're pretending to be hostile, and they bring him to this tent, and a woman called Clue interrogates Michael. She asks him questions about Walt, but he doesn't really know the answers to them. And then she tells him like, for somebody who cares deeply about his son, like you really don't know much about him, Michael. And then Michael demands to see Walt. He wants to see his kid, so they give him 3 minutes alone with Walt, and then they hug, and Walt tells Michael that they make him do tests and that they are pretending. Clue orders Walt to stop talking, and she warns him that they'll take him to the room. So they bring him out, and they separate him and Michael. Clue then gives crying Michael some names. She gives him the names of Jack, Kate, Hurley, and Sawyer, and she tells him that he must only bring them back to this place and no other people. Nobody else can come. So in the present, Michael tries to tell them that only 5 people can come with them back to the others, and they need to keep it small. And Saeed, he sees directly through Michael. He knows that Michael has been turned, and he goes to talk to Jack. He tells Jack that this isn't the same Michael that left. Michael tries to get Hurley to come. Hurley doesn't want to at first, but after Ana Lucia's and Libby's funerals, he changes his mind. Like, Hurley decides to go. I like that Hurley like has really no violence inside him. On the beach, Charlie finds Dharma kit, which has vaccine in it, and he takes it to Claire, which is like a nice gesture, and Claire starts to accept him again. Vincent brings him a Mary statue, and then like he just throws it in the ocean, and then he decides to get rid of all of his stash as well. Gets rid of that too. And finally, we are finally done with Charlie's heroin problem. So this episode ends at Libby and Ana Lucia's funeral, and it ends like on this big cliffhanger because Sun looks out on the ocean and she sees a boat. She says the word boat, and like everybody just like looks out on the ocean, and then like the episode ends when we see like this boat coming to the island, and that's how the episode ends. I love this episode. I think it's really great. It's great seeing like more context as to why Michael did the things he did. Give this episode a 9 out of 10. We are now at the finale of season 2, which is Live Together, Die Alone Part 1 and 2. Flashbacks show how Desmond traveled to the island. He wanted to win a race around the world, which was organized by Penny's father, Widmore, because long story short, Desmond really wants Widmore's respect. He wants Widmore's blessing to marry his daughter, and he just doesn't have it. Before he leaves, Desmond actually meets Libby, who gives him her boat named the Elizabeth. So there's like this terrible storm in the middle of the ocean, just shipwrecks there, and that's how Desmond he crashed on the island. And he is found by a man named Kevin, who we see earlier in this season in one of Ayid's flashbacks, which is like kind of insane. We don't even know how Kevin arrived to the island. So Kevin tells Desmond about the computer and how like they need to put the numbers and hit execute every 108 minutes. Desmond he is now stuck in the hatch. He listens to Kevin, like he trusts Kevin, like he doesn't have any reason not to trust him. And Kevin also tells him about like Rudzinski, who like shot his brains out in the hatch like before Desmond arrived. So Desmond stays with Kevin for 3 years in the hatch, and he decides to follow Kevin one day outside in the jungle. Kevin tells him that the jungle has like radiation, and he puts on his suit when he leaves. And Desmond follows him, and he discovers that Rudzinski was preparing to leave without him. And the two of them, they just like have this fight, and then Kevin hits his head accidentally on a rock, and Desmond is now alone, but he needs to hurry up and get back to the hatch because the timer is about to go off. And then it does. It goes past 0, and then like he hears like system failure, and then it's really like a stressful scene. So he still manages to enter the numbers. He hits execute, and then it stops. Everything is okay, like the world hasn't ended yet, but like Desmond knows that he can't go anywhere. This is like the most important job of his life now. And then one evening he thinks about killing himself, but then he hears like lock banging on the hatch, and then he goes open the light, and then like the two of them like almost had like a religious experience without even knowing it. Like they both saved each other's lives without knowing it. And so on the island during Ana Lucia's and Libby's funeral, the survivors notice that a boat arrives, and they head out to see what's inside. And so Jack, Sawyer, and Saeed, they head out to the boat. They swim to it, and they find Desmond, who is really just drunk, and he's been swimming around the island for like 2 weeks. Ever since he left, he hasn't gone anywhere. And Desmond is a drunk now, and he thinks that the island is hell. And so Echo thinks that his life's work now revolves around the button, even though like Locke thinks that they should stop pushing it. She asks Desmond for help. They're really on opposite sides here. And Mr. Echo goes to see Charlie when Locke throws Mr. Echo out of the hatch, and Mr. Echo asks Charlie for help. So Echo and Charlie try to blow up the hatch with dynamite in order to open the blast doors. This, however, doesn't work. Charlie manages to get away in time, but the blast badly wounds Echo. So while they're waiting, Desmond picks up this log printing that Mr. Echo brought from the Pearl Station, and he discovers that it happened on the same date that Oceanic 815 crashed. So Desmond is sort of responsible for the plane crash on November 22nd, 2004. So Desmond now thinks that this is real, that the computer is important, and that Locke is wrong. He goes under the hatch and he takes his key, and then he just sticks it in the hole and twists the key. And then, like a great noise and a brilliant flash of white light appears, and like everybody's blinded by that. They just don't know what's going on. So meanwhile, Jack, Kate, Shirley, and Sawyer go with Michael in order to get back Walt and get revenge on the others. The others are clearly more than them. I just don't really understand what their plan is. But Saeed is actually ahead of them, and Saeed takes Jin and Sun on Desmond's boat to meet them where the others are, which is a great plan because the others don't know that they have a boat. Saeed, Jin, and Sun head to the others' camp, and they see a statue with 1 foot and only 4 toes. They then go to the camp and find that the area is deserted. Saeed then makes the black smoke to warn Jack. Jack realizes that Michael isn't leading them to the right place, and Jack finally confronts him. He confronts Michael, and Michael tells the others that he actually killed Libby and Ana Lucia, and then he tells Hurley I didn't want to kill Libby, I just didn't had time to think. But then Hurley tells him what if you did have time to think? So the survivors they get attacked by the other, they get attacked by darts, and then they go to sleep they're drugged, and so they get kidnapped. They are brought to a dock, and then they meet Clue, they meet Tom, they meet them, and then Kate tells Tom that she knows that his beard is fake, so Tom takes it off. And so Miss Clue, she lets Hurley go. She tells him to tell the others on the beach never to come back here. Michael and Walt are finally reunited. Michael got what he asked for, and that's the boat. The two of them, they leave together, and then they just leave their friends on the dock, and they don't know what's gonna happen to them, but Michael still goes like a coward. We also get this sort of epilogue where Penny Winmore's crew is searching for the island, but they're in the Antarctica, and they think they found the coordinates of the island. And then that's pretty much how this season ends. Those are my thoughts on the entire season 2 of Lost. I'd give this entire season 9 out of 10. So let me know what you think about the season 2 of Lost down in the comments below. Please comment and please subscribe, and see you next time.